What's going on, nation? AJ Reilly here with Eric Vincent for Beyond the Box once again to kick off your Tuesday night. We are glad to be here for your favorite Detroit sports show. And how do we know it's your favorite? Because us two are involved. That's how we know it's your favorite.
Of course.
And so we will give you the best content here for the next half hour. We'll see how long it goes. We got a lot to talk about. NFL draft combine. We're going to get into that. Should the Lions be focusing solely on defense, or should they have their eyes on some potential offensive players? We'll get to that. We'll also talk about the Chicago Bears and the number one overall pick, which apparently, on reports Monday, came out and said they may be shopping that number one pick. Should the Detroit Lions get involved in that? And then we got a final segment where we're going to talk about AJ and Eric's top 5. The top 5 most beloved athletes currently residing in the city of Detroit. So let's jump right into that. Let's not waste any time at all. Eric,
let's do this.
Let's talk about the NFL Combine, which started today. It runs through the week, and there's a lot of different attention that needs to be paid to a lot of different places. Defense specifically is where the Lions should be focusing. Should the Lions only be looking at defensive players at this Combine? I know that's a very simple question to answer probably, but I think they probably should.
It is a simple question. You just gave the wrong answer.
Okay.
I think people need to start giving the Lions a little bit more credit. I know we're scared as fans,
a little bit,
but let's be real about what we saw. Now, yes, it started off bad. You can't take that away from what they did for the season start. But this team ended 9-7. The defense turned things around with some breakout performances by a lot of young rookie players that we didn't even expect to play as well as they did. Kirby Joseph, Malcolm Rodriguez, even Hutchinson himself. I didn't expect it to be as involved as he was. So knowing that this team did a lot of things, we beat good teams. We beat teams that matter in the division. To me, I think for teams that are trying to turn it around, the easiest way to start that turnaround is by competing and winning in your division. That one loss cost them against the Vikings, but outside of that, they were great in the division this year. So I think the Lions have the ability to look outside defense if they choose to. It doesn't mean any defensive position or offensive position. It's not best offensive player available. If you're going to go offense, it has to be one of the key pieces that you need, whether it's a guard. You've pushed back on the idea of a receiver. I still think they need a number 3. I wouldn't take them as high as number 1, but the question is, should they be paying attention to only defensive players in the combine? No. They should be looking at tight ends. They should be looking at receivers. You should be looking at offensive guards as well. Maybe even running backs, because they might get them late in the drafts. But yes, I think they should keep offense on the board 100%.
I want to go back to something that you said real quick.
Okay.
They beat good teams in that stretch. Did they?
Yes.
Who?
They beat
the Vikings, who we consider a fraud. The Green Bay Packers, who we know were as dysfunctional as Al Bundy's Married with Children family.
Okay.
Who did they beat?
They beat teams that were on their schedule that had better records than them, that were playing hotter and better than them.
The Jacksonville Jaguars?
I didn't buy in the Jets. Yes, I admit and agree with you. They're a fraud team. But what did they do to the Jaguars? They beat their behinds at home and treated bad teams like they were supposed to. And they beat the good ones when they weren't expected to.
But I'm saying, what good teams? There wasn't really good teams that they beat on that back half of the schedule. Everybody thought at the beginning of the year last year that the beginning of the schedule was going to be the easy part, right? With the Eagles, who we didn't think were anything, but, I said a long time ago, they're probably a team that we should be paying attention to.
And you
the Vikings,
them.
Who we said are frauds. The Commanders, right? Those were the teams that they were supposed to beat. I'm just trying to figure out, the one good team that they played, the Bills, they ended up losing to. Could they have beaten them, and did they play well enough to beat them? Yes, they did. But at the same time, they didn't really beat anybody of significance that I can remember. I could be wrong.
You're wrong.
Blast me in the comments if I'm wrong.
You are wrong. Because even if it's not the teams that you just named outside the division, they played well and competitive in every single game in the division. Okay. So even if it's not those playoff teams outside, those teams matter as well.
I'm 100% with you on that. But we have also said on this show very recently that the NFC North is not a very good division.
Totally agree.
So the teams that they're beating and competing with, are they competing with them because maybe they're just not there yet, and they have significant holes on their defense that cause those problems, a la the loss to Minnesota earlier in the year where they completely blew coverages and Amani Oruwariye couldn't keep his hands off of Adam Thielen. Like, that's significant thing. You got to take the whole into account. We can't just take the 8-2 over the last 10 into account. We need to take all 17 into account.
But let me ask you a question, then I'm going to let you tee off.
Okay.
If let's say they lost to the Giants or they lost to the Jags or any of those teams that you just tried to discredit, we would be looking at them and killing them for losing to those teams. We got to at very least give them credit when they take care of business when they're not supposed to or when they are supposed to.
Yes, you're 100% right. And you're correct. Like, I do give them credit for going 8-2 in those last 10 because they did beat the teams that were on their schedule. You have no control who's on your schedule. You just have to beat the team that you're supposed to play that Sunday.
Exactly.
I'm with you. And they did that, and they did that phenomenally well. But it's not like they were playing, though, the Chiefs, right? It's not like they were playing, those...
The Bills?
I named the Bills as the good team that they played. Not they were playing the Bengals or the Niners or any... You know what I'm saying? Like, those are the teams and those are the games that I feel like I really want to see what they look like against those teams. I don't want to see them beat the Jaguars 40-7 or whatever that was. Because is that really a measure of how good they are? Now, I will say, and I call it the Green Bay Packers dysfunctional. The win in Green Bay was important, and it was a big win, and it was a good win. I'm with you on that.
And the one at Ford Field. And the one at Ford Field was huge.
And the one at Ford Field, which kind of kicked all of this off, right? It kind of kicked off the winning streak, if you will. But there's significant problems on that defense. There's significant problems on that defense. And this defensive draft class, if you look at the defensive draft class, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, almost half of the top 16. And if you go even farther to the top 18, like our defensive players, I'm sitting there and maybe it's an 80-20 rule. I'm spending 80% of my time watching these defensive players and scouting these defensive players, 20% of my time on the offense. Because the offense was not a problem last year. At all.
That's not true. There was a stretch where they were bad. They were hurt and they lacked depth at receiver when the offensive line was dealing with injuries, really from the start of the season.
Solely Jared Goff's fault, actually.
Okay, but we'll get into that.
I was waiting for a reaction there, man. Come on.
I thought we were going to let Jared Goff skate on this episode.
No,
fine. Okay. No, go ahead.
So if that's the case, if you think that they need to look at offense, what type of offensive talent are you looking at? Are you looking at top-tier offensive talent that you're going to use one of the first 5 picks that you have in the top 81 picks on an offensive player?
I won't rule it out. Let's say this. First of all, I trust whatever Brad Holmes goes with.
I agree.
However,
I do too. To an extent.
So you don't think they're at a position where they could, like, a big conversation is big quarterback? I'm not opposed to it, but I'm not in love with the idea. Let's just say hypothetically they get an Anthony Richardson and they stash him away. Do you think they could still make use of the rest of their picks to fill in the holes that you're talking about? Because yes, there are a lot of holes on defense, but to say that they got 5 of the first 85 it was 81?
5 of the first 81.
I don't think they need all 5 on defense to make sure that they're going to be good next season.
I don't either.
So they can look at offense.
Your first round picks come with that added 5th-year option.
Okay.
Your top offensive talent, you can't use all those first 2 picks on off. You just can't. In my opinion, the only way you could, and this is barring like a miracle and everything working out. And we're going to get into like the trade discussion here in the next segment. But if you were to like trade back and end up like 20, is like 20-ish, somewhere in there, 20 to 28, and Anthony Richardson was still on the board, that's potential.
Okay.
That's potentially an acceptable move. I would not trade up to take Anthony Richardson like they did last year to get J-Mo.
Me neither.
I would not, and I've seen this guy mocked to the Lions quite often at 18. I would not use 18 to get Quentin Johnson either from TCU.
I wouldn't either.
I would not use 18 to draft Bijan Robinson. And I have said on this show quite often, I'm not really looking at an offensive type player until at least round 2, maybe even the second pick of round 2.
Which would still be considered early. Yeah.
But most of your top tier offensive talent isn't really going to be there at that point. So is it worth it? You know what I'm saying? This is a very, like if I'm looking at the draft Bible that I've composed or compiled, like you could get an offensive guard in that second round for sure.
Right.
But like your top quarterbacks, Stroud, Young, Levis, and Richardson, they're going to be off the board by the second round. Almost guaranteed.
For sure.
Your top receivers, Quentin Johnson, Jordan Addison, Jackson Smith, Nick Jibba. They could be off the board by the second round. Maybe not Smith, Nick Jibba. But I can't see a scenario outside of making a Jameson Williams type move where offense is the top priority.
But see, that's where you're going that I don't agree with. See, you keep saying it as if they're gonna maybe trade up for a receiver or gamble on.
Sure.
I'm not saying do that. No, if there's a tight end that they're in love with, fans are going to riot. I think if they take Robinson early, fans will be very upset with that. If it's a move that makes sense, like a trenches move for the guard, or you trade back and. See, honestly, I'm not in love with trading back and taking any offensive player early. I'm with you on taking them in the second, maybe. But at that point, it's still early in the draft. So they should at least be looking, but it's a very limited group of offensive players they should be looking at. So we can split the difference there.
Top guard, and we would agree that guard is a position in need. Let me just be very clear. Here's what I think the Lions' positions of need is ranked in order. Cornerback, defensive line, offensive guard, tight end, quarterback. In that order.
Okay.
Would you agree?
No, I put linebacker before quarterback.
Before quarterback?
Yeah.
Okay.
Outside of that, I'm okay with, but just linebacker has to be in there.
I would actually you're right. I would put linebacker before tight end. I'd put quarterback, defensive line, offensive guard, linebacker, tight end, quarterback.
Okay.
The top offensive guard, according to my rankings that I've compiled from 5 different ranking websites, is Osiris Torrance from Florida. And he's the 24th best prospect. He ranks 26 on my cumulative ranking.
Yeah, it's not rich in offensive linemen of the first round at least.
No, right? Yeah. But it is rich in defensive players. Like I said, you've got a ton of defensive players. Jahmyr Gibbs is up there as a running back. I don't think he's worth a first round pick. I personally don't even think Keely Ringo's worth a first round pick, and he's a quarterback.
He keeps falling a lot.
Right, because he's a freak athlete, but he doesn't anticipate well.
Right.
And in the NFL, a quarterback, anticipation is everything.
He'll eat that alive.
And this is going to be part of the trade-up suggestion, okay, or a segment coming up. But we pick 6 and 18 right now. I don't think they pick 6 and 18 when the draft comes. There's going to be some kind of trade that's going to be made. And plus, we don't even know, right? March 15th is when free agency is going to start, which could shake up the entire draft strategy depending on who they sign, right? If they sign Bobby Wagner, well, guess what? Linebacker's not a need anymore.
Yeah, they're all set at that point.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I don't know. I feel like my opinion would also change if they signed like a Bobby Wagner. And let's say they sign like a Wagner and maybe a second tier defensive interior guy. Okay. Now
then we're talking.
Now your strategy can change.
Yeah.
Now your offense is more of a priority.
But as it sits right now, yes.
But as it sits right now,
Yeah.
Your first 3 picks have got to be defense.
Yep. I'm okay with that philosophy.
Maybe even your first 4 picks. And then in the 3rd round, you're seeing if one of the tight ends is still available. Dalton Kincaid or Darnell Washington, right?
Yes.
Or Hendon Hooker. He's older. I get it. Understand. But could be there. I also, think that there's going to be plenty of quarterback talent available towards the 6th round that could at least be a suitable backup. And you see what you have. And then next year's when you maybe make a splash and trade up to get one of the better quarterbacks.
Right.
Like the kid from USC, Caleb Williams. That would take a lot. I get it.
That would take a lot, yes.
But I'm just saying at the same time, there's plenty of ways you can go. And I think the next few weeks, specifically what happens at the Combine and what happens in free agency, are going to make the picture much more clear as to what the draft should look like for the Lions.
Do you buy into the Combine?
To an extent, I do. What I don't buy into, and I'll be very clear on this, is I don't buy into somebody who might be. Let's take a Keely Ringo, for example. He's going to test well at the Combine.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not taking him going from like a mid-tier, like late 1st round to mid-2nd round type pick, being shot up into the top 10 of the 1st round. I don't buy that at all. It's the same thing with Walker from last year.
Okay.
Aiden Hutchinson legitimately should be a Jacksonville Jaguar.
But
because of the Combine,
right.
even though Hutchinson had a great Combine as well, Walker ends up being the number 1 pick, which is fine. Like, worked out great for us. I'm not upset about that in the slightest bit.
Not at all.
But I don't buy the guys that meteorically rise because of the Combine. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. You see that with the Pro Day as well. For quarterbacks,
sure. Zach
more than anybody.
Wilson, he makes one throw during the Pro Day and becomes a number 2 overall
Perfect example. Malik Willis, Lions fans, myself included, we were seduced by what he was doing at the Pro Day.
I didn't
and
buy
everybody clamored
I
for
didn't
him.
love it.
I was into it. I ain't
and
gonna
then
lie.
you get guys who are like solid, specifically in college, who maybe don't test well or are injured, like Nakobe Dean, who was my guy.
Right.
Like if around the draft last year, I was hollering for Nakobe Dean. I understand he went a lot later than what he was projected to go, but yeah, there's value to it, I think. I just don't think you don't measure good football players strictly on speed, jumping ability, and agility drills.
Right.
Because yes, that's part of the game. 100% that's part of the game. But that doesn't measure intangibles. Like it doesn't mean they're a good football player, it just means they're a really fast athlete.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
that doesn't translate right away.
I don't buy into it a ton, but we'll see. It's going to be interesting this week, though. I'm excited. Like, I like watching the Combine. It's fun to watch them go through the drills.
Yeah. I don't stop. I don't sit and watch it. I don't know, but I
look at the highlights.
Something pops up on the timeline. I'll check it out and see what it's about. But that's as far as it goes for me.
So after the Combine, come April, there's going to be an NFL draft. So let's transition to segment 2 and let's talk about the NFL draft, where the Chicago Bears are picking first, and the Detroit Lions are picking 6. Now, there's a report that came out on Monday that says the Chicago Bears are shopping the number 1 pick. Which is interesting, because if they're shopping the number 1 pick, they're keeping Justin Fields as their quarterback. I mean, that's like the de facto conclusion you can draw, right? They're not drafting a quarterback. What's going to be interesting is who they trade with. There's been rumored that the Colts could trade up to make sure that they get the quarterback that they wanted. Carolina's an option that could trade up to get the quarterback that they want. Should the Lions be in that conversation, Eric?
Yeah.
No.
Yes.
God bless no.
The Lions should be in that conversation.
Why?
Now, it should not be for a quarterback.
No, I know that.
It should not be trying to move up for a quarterback, but should they entertain the idea of trying to make sure Will Anderson
absolutely not
is in Honolulu Blue? Yeah. What are you talking about?
Gosh.
Why would you not? Why would you not try to make sure and see and just test the water on what it would take to get a Jalen Carter? If they don't call them to even see what it's like, I would be very disappointed. They don't have to move up. I'm not saying it's what it is, but based on what you said, Lo, you talked about like the elite edge rushers that are in that top 5. And if they're not there, trade out. But if they want to get a Miles Murphy and make sure that he's, in the Honolulu Blue by the time the fall starts, I have no problem with that. They have the extra capital to do it. They need, like you just said, there's a lot of need in terms of the defense. So why not address it with the best player available and possibly move up a couple spots in a draft that may be chaotic as ever, where everybody is trying to trade?
It's going to be chaotic.
So they need to do their due diligence to make sure that if they don't have a chance, that's fine. But pick up the phone and find out. Absolutely.
First of all, your boy Miles Murphy is dropping a little bit.
Is he?
Yeah, as I checked the weekly rankings, he tends to be dropping.
To outside of 10 or just like
he would be a reach at 6.
Wow, yeah. That's crazy.
Like the top 10. Well, maybe he wouldn't be a reach at 6, but like his cumulative ranking right now is 9.6.
Okay. So yeah, it's a couple of a gamble.
He's dropping a little bit, but that's beside the point. The Lions. Here's the problem with trading up to number 1. This is the most amount of draft capital you are going to have for the foreseeable future. 2, 3, 4 years, right?
Okay.
So you can think of that one of two ways. Yes, you could use that to move up and draft a Will Anderson or a Jalen Carter, right?
Phenomenal players.
The 2 best players in this draft, bar none. Yep. Bar none. There's no debate about that. I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze, though. In the sense that if you had to trade 6, because the Chicago Bears are not taking less than pick number 6.
Right.
Plus potentially one of your second-round picks and a future draft pick. Just for that number 1 overall pick, it could work out, right? Because obviously you could take Will Anderson or Jalen Carter, whichever one you like more, and then you still have 18, which you could trade up from or back from.
Yep.
I just don't know, man. I don't like it.
I think
it's having 5, because you got to go with the law of averages here, right? You've got 5 draft picks. What is the odds that 5 of those draft picks are going to all hit? They're not very high.
It's not likely, no.
So you've got to give yourself the most opportunity to hit on 2 or 3 out of those 5.
So based on that, wouldn't it make sense to go after the best player available on a defensive line that's a piece away?
Yeah, for sure. But did you say the defensive line is a piece away or the defense is a piece away?
No. Defensive line is a piece away, not the defense.
So if that's the case, but if that's the case, sure, you are minimizing your capital to then fill one area of need when you have multiple areas of need.
Right, but as you've discussed a lot, that there are different values for different areas on each side of the field.
Sure.
The D-line is probably the most valuable, maybe you can argue, on either side of the field. Outside of quarterback.
I would say second or third.
Okay,
Depending on where you put quarterback on your power ranking,
right.
I think my power ranking would be offensive line, defensive line, quarterback.
Right.
Those are that's like my top 3.
Okay, so knowing that and knowing what you could add to a D-line that already has shown promise, that has Aiden that's, ascending, throwing in a Will Anderson or a Jalen Carter on top of that, and with Brad Holmes, who showed the ability to draft late, where you're not just relying like you did in the other regimes with those top 3 rounds, really hoping they pan out. You've seen that he's able to find gems, and you're able to be a little bit more expendable knowing you have that trust in him. So I don't think it's that crazy to throw out that idea.
It's not crazy. I'm not saying you're crazy, but I am saying I want to give the guy that I trust the most opportunity to do the most things with it. Meaning, I want him to have 5 picks in the top 81. I don't want him to have 4 picks in the top 81. And then on top of that, because of what you just said, his ability to find talent late in the draft, James Houston.
Rodrigo.
And beyond the 3rd round, beyond pick 81, there's no reason why he can't fulfill that need. Now, I understand that somewhat undermines my focus only on defense argument that I just made in the last segment, But at the same time, you've got to take, I think, more risk when it comes to defensive players because you don't know how they're going to fit necessarily schematically and within like how they're going to adjust to the speed of the game, whereas you would trade up to get more surefire offensive. I think it's easier to be certain on offensive players than it is defensive players, is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, I don't know if I agree with that, especially in certain positions. Especially considering for this team. So let's take the Lions.
With quarterback being the exception. Let me be very clear about that.
Fine.
With quarterback being the very clear exception.
But based on how the Lions are set up,
be.
Right, but based on how they're set up, they're not in a need where they have to trade up for an offensive player.
No,
so
and they should.
Defense, right, it's defense, they could do that. And knowing that Jalen Carter, like you said, you're not going to get, I don't think they're trying to put together the 85 Bears. That doesn't have to be their thing.
No.
So if they just have an elite D-line and, a Ben Badeau breakback 7, I think you can live with that and, survive with that alone. So even if you are taking a gamble like that, I think that trade up is worth it considering who's at the top and considering where they are with this team set up already.
I just don't know. I think for a team that's in year 3 of the rebuild, having more draft capital is more important than landing the number 1 overall pick.
Do you so in drafting period, let's just take everything away. Are you for trading up at all? Because it seems like you've pushed back on a lot of the idea of trading up from where it was J-Mo last season, the idea of it now. It just seems like it's not your thing.
It just depends on what is there.
Okay.
So see, last year when they traded up, when they made that trade up at 12, before they announced the name, I was like, oh my gosh, he's doing it. I thought he was going for Devin Lloyd or Kyle Hamilton or, actually addressing need. And then when the name J-Mo was announced, I was like, well, that seems like a waste of a trade up. However, listen, it is what it is, right? J-Mo's going to be what he is. I'm rooting for him. It all depends on what you trade up to do.
They addressed a need, though. Wide receiver was a need last season.
I understand that, but you could have also had George Pickens in the second round, who would have played the whole year.
Okay.
Right? Pickens, J-Mo has elite speed. I'm with you.
Yeah.
But Pickens is also a really good player.
He is. I like him.
Could have
like
gotten,
his upside a lot.
Sky Moore's more of an Amon-Ra St. Brown type receiver, but he would have been available there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pickens, Treylon Burks, there were so many wide receivers that were in this draft. I'm glad that we traded up and got him so that he didn't go to Green Bay. Sure, I get that, and I love the viral video of the Packers fan just freaking out that we did that. I don't know if you've seen that or not.
I did see that, yes.
But it all depends on what you trade up for. If you've got, let's say that somehow Brad Holmes acquires similar draft capital next season, but the picks aren't as high because we obviously had a more successful season.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't draft a quarterback this year, but trades up to draft Caleb Williams next year. That's a good trade up, and I'm not gonna be like, no, don't do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay.
It all depends on what you're like. Am I gonna be mad if they trade up and get Will Anderson?
No, you wouldn't.
No. Do I think it's gonna be necessarily the best, most valuable move that they could have made? I'm also gonna say probably not. But I'm not gonna be upset about it.
Right. Depending on what they give up, depending on how much it takes to get up there.
Exactly. And I don't think it's going to be cheap.
No, I don't think they'll get to 1 either. I know you mentioned that at the top. I think if they maybe could get to 2. I've seen mocks where Carter's fallen to 5.
Yeah.
It's possible. A lot of teams in the top 10, not even in 5. Those lower teams like Carolina and Atlanta, they could pop up to the top 5 too. So
so those are the teams that you got to keep track of, right? Carolina at 9, the Falcons as well. They are all going to, or Carolina's at 10, the Falcons are at 9, the Raiders are at 8.
Another wild card team, yep.
Right. Excuse me, that's not correct. The Raiders are at 7, the Falcons are at 8, the Panthers are at 9.
Panthers are at 9, okay.
And the Titans are at 11. So, any one of those teams could legitimately move into the top 5 to take a quarterback.
Uh-huh.
Which, again, works in the Lions' favor if those teams all jump up to get those quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Is it unrealistic to think that the top 4 quarterbacks are off the board by the time pick 6 comes around?
No, that's not.
I don't think that's
very possible.
I don't think that's unrealistic.
Teams are going to get aggressive.
Be the best case scenario for the Detroit Lions.
Absolutely. They need that to happen. Like we were all clouded the Houston Texans, but that Chicago falling to 1 made a lot of dreams possible for some teams looking for a quarterback now.
Right, because let's say the Falcons or even the Raiders, let's say either of them or the Panthers trade up with the Chicago Bears. Well, the Chicago Bears then are going to be behind the Lions.
Right.
And Arizona doesn't need a quarterback. They do need offensive line, but there's not anybody high enough to get at number 3. So most likely, Will Carter's not going to make it past 3.
No.
Unless they take Jalen Davis. I don't know. There's so many scenarios. We got to stop talking draft until free agency happens. We just got to do it because there's so many things. We can't do that. There's so many things that are just like so many variables. I just don't think that trading up is in the best interest. Yes, it's going to land you a phenomenal player, and I'll be happy. But I wonder how much it's going to hurt you on the back end.
I think they'll be fine. Especially if you can get a Bobby Wagner for the cheap. If you can, steal and plug him in. Remember, we're talking about a 2-3 year window of really getting somewhere. So
if they go heavily aggressive in free agency, which hasn't really been the style, but could be now that they put together, that 8-2 over the last 10. If they were to go aggressive and be like Bobby Wagner, right? Like defense, maybe they even sign like a wide receiver or something like that. If they get aggressive in free agency, then I'm like, okay, package 6 and 18 together and go get Will Anderson, right?
Yeah.
If they sign like a good cornerback in free agency, maybe they make a trade for Jalen Ramsey for one of their second round picks, and they kind of use the draft capital as fodder for building a more experienced and more talented defense.
Yeah.
Yeah, trade up and get it. But it's all going to be dependent upon what is happening at that time.
Of course.
What has happened in free agency, and now where are we sitting? So you got to tune into this show because we'll have plenty of answers. I guarantee you that. And it's time to move on to our third segment because the draft is right around the corner. The combine is starting this week. There's going to be so many more questions. There's going to be so many more answers. So make sure you're tuning in to Beyond the Box twice a week. Subscribe and like on all social platforms, especially on YouTube. Click that bell for all the notifications so that you can get what our content drops. Let's end the show and talk about something fun. Beloved Detroit athletes.
I'm excited for this.
We're going to power rank our top 5. If we share, we did this a little while ago with the top 5 guys who need a Super Bowl win in 2023. It's a new segment that we're rolling out called Eric and AJ's Top 5s. Could be anything. Could be pizza places. Could be game day foods. Could be beloved Detroit athletes, which is what it's going to be tonight. So, Eric, let's power rank them 5 through 1. If we have one of the same guys at a different place, we'll just make mention of it and where we had them. And we will go from there. Kick it off, my man. Who do you got at number 5? Who's your 5th most beloved Detroit athlete?
To me, the 5th most beloved athlete is a guy with a lot of upside. We didn't get to see a lot of him this season with the Detroit Lions, but I think it's Jameson Williams. I have seen unbelievable clamoring to
right
see
out of that
J-Mo
conversation
just shine.
Of course.
And it's something. Oh yes, it's something about wide receivers especially in Detroit because
just
they hold a
expendable they are.
No, they hold a deep spot in our hearts as Detroit fans.
Why,
and J-Mo could be that next great. I don't because of Calvin Johnson, Johnny Morton, Herman Moore.
Yeah,
there's a lot of great
right.
wide receivers that have come through Detroit Lions franchise. So,
but let's be very clear though, J-Mo is not Calvin Johnson.
No, I mean I'm not saying that, but he's like I was in Ford Field when he caught. Well, no, not when he caught the touchdown, but when he did the end around.
Yeah.
Seeing how loud it got, just seeing him touch the ball. Even when he didn't, people just saw him get on the field and see the reaction. It's a lot of love for J-Mo. I got things put him up in top 5. You don't like that dude. Ooh, look at you.
I don't really like it. I don't think he's. I think that people love him, but like the top 5 most beloved athletes in the city right now.
He's big on social media too. He's big with the kids.
Okay. I feel like I'm starting to not like him, even though like I do like him.
Yeah, I don't
I gotta reel it in because I do like the kid and I want him to be successful. Just gotta stop the diva stuff. Number 5 for me. Number 5 for me is on the hardwood, and he wears number 23, and it's Jaden Ivey.
Oh, okay.
And there's a reason. Like, I know that people necessarily aren't thrilled with the fact that they could have had other people when they drafted him. I get that, but I think that his connection to the city, right? Didn't his grandfather play for the Lions and his mother played for the Shock? His connection to the city, the fact that he's kind of embraced the city and embraced his role, and I think that he's a very bright young star that the team is clearly building around. He's as athletic as can be. He's exciting to watch on the basketball court. I think people would just gravitate toward him, so I'm putting Jaden Ivey at number 5.
Yep, his dad went to Country Day as well.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, shout out Javen Hunter. That's a good one.
Thanks.
That could have lined up better with the draft. I know a lot of guys didn't want Keegan Murray. And like you said, knowing that he wanted to be in Detroit, what the ties were, that was awesome seeing how that came together. Shout out to Jaden Ivey.
Who do you got at number 4?
Number 4 is somebody that flashes whatever. I'm a casual in the hockey world. I'm okay with admitting that.
Sure.
But when I can tell someone's special, I know it's something real. Mo Sider is my number 4. Wow. He gets a lot of good reception inside of LCA whenever I've seen him play.
Okay.
He's just like, I'm still learning the game, but just knowing how he moves, his connectability to the team, and seeing the success as well. Just won Rookie of the Year, and it's shown that he looks like a franchise player, the piece of this franchise. So I'm very excited for him. I think a lot of other fans are as well. I got to put Mo Sider top 5.
Okay. So a guy that I have to put number 5 and make sure or in the top 5, make sure he gets there, is Reilly Green. Number 4 for me is Reilly Green. Always smiling, lights up the room, like biggest smile on his face all the time. Great baseball player. Has shown the ability to play phenomenal defense and hit the ball. And honestly, changed the entire team dynamic when he came up last season.
No question.
It wasn't necessarily phenomenal offensive production, but it was enough offensive production to make the offense a little bit better. They're still the worst in the league. I'm looking for big things for Reilly Green in year number 2. And I got him at number 4 on my most beloved Detroit athletes. Who do you got at number 3?
Yeah, he had the Jose Iglesias excitement. I love seeing him. If he would have played from the start, I would have put him up there too with you.
If he would have played from the start, he would have been an all-star last year.
I'm not even against that. He was spectacular.
Yeah.
Number 3, I almost didn't put him in here, but I can't leave a GOAT off this list. Miguel Cabrera's got to be number 3. He was, before Reilly Green, he was one of the lifelines that was keeping the Tigers' season in interest. He was fantastic in spots that we didn't expect him to. He's now debuted a new hairstyle and whatnot, and he's an all-time great. Like people can debate. Excuse me. People can debate the GOATs of generations. He's easily, if he's not, he's at least in the conversation. Like you put Pujols up there, whoever else. He's in that conversation. To me, he's the greatest of this generation, and he's one of the best of all time. Got to put Miggy on this list.
Interesting. Okay. I've got Dylan Larkin at 3. The captain. I think captains in the winged wheel, red uniform, white uniform, whichever one it is, if you got that C on your chest, you are a beloved member of this sports town. And he's the captain. And yes, they're going through conversations about his contract and an extension and all that, but he's Dylan Larkin. He's a hometown guy. You can't help but like him. I mean, he's probably my favorite Red Wing, even though there's Mo Sider. Like, I agree that was a great pick, but I'm going to put the captain up there over Mo Sider.
That's surprising. It's because, like, I've seen fans push back on the idea of bringing him back because of the contract situation.
I know, but
that's the only reason I couldn't put him in there.
I think that's silly. He's the best player on your team. Is he the best player at his position in the league? No. But he is the best player on your team.
Okay.
And he's your captain.
Okay.
if you have a captain, you have to like the captain.
The Red Wings captain is a big responsibility.
It's a big deal. It's like playing
label.
quarterback for the Lions.
Facts. I'll give you that. Okay.
Like, that's a big deal.
If he doesn't come back, you got to take that's going to look bad. So you got to update your list again.
I think he comes back.
Okay.
No. If he doesn't come back, then you know what? We'll do another list.
Right, we'll go
back. Who do you got at number
cool.
2?
Number 2, the guy that he won me over this year. I got to give Aiden Hutchinson some love. He was phenomenal.
We have the same number 2.
Okay, cool. So, I'll keep mine a little brief then. Yeah, he really blossomed in a lot of different areas. I mean, his ability to not just rush the passer, getting after the run, his athleticism, his hands. Like, people don't talk about how when he was picking pass off, it wasn't some lucky stuff where he's catching it with the chest. He's snatching it in areas where he's not even expected to be in. Yep. He has won over a lot of people. I couldn't put him at number 1 because of the Michigan State fans who still push back on him. But, I think he's winning a lot of people over. Hutch is my number 2.
I had Hutch. I mean, I think that he kind of embodied this Lions season. And, like, a lot of the success was built upon him blossoming, like you said. And being the hometown kid, Divine Child, and then the University of Michigan, and then the Detroit Lions, like, you can't help but love a guy like that.
Real quick, we could maybe do this later as a topic at some other point. What do you think his ceiling is at this point? After what we saw, what do you think his ceiling could be?
Oh, man. Yeah, we got to do that at a different time. You can't put me on a spot like that,
man.
No
problem. That's cool.
It's pretty good,
it's
but
a
like...
cliffhanger. It's a good cliffhanger.
I mean, it's got to be like a top 5 kind of thing. Like, could he be one of the Bosa brothers? Yeah.
I would
think so.
I think it's on the table.
Number 1, and I know that we disagree here.
I think this one is obvious. I'm mad I don't have his jersey on right now.
It's not obvious.
This is a clear-cut, easy answer.
It's not.
It's that bad man that the Pistons drafted with the number 1 overall pick. It's something about Detroit athletes that are homegrown and drafted and developed here.
Okay. Now you're
it's
just
an easy call.
My guy.
It's an easy call. It's Cade Cunningham.
No, it's not,
It's
man.
easy. Go on social media. It's a billion Cade Avies.
I love Cade, and I agree with you. He is great. But the amount of people that dislike Cade Cunningham means he cannot be number 1.
They're not real people.
And
they don't count as real people.
And I noticed a clear omission from your list. Who's my number 1?
Who?
The most beloved Detroit athlete right now is Jamal Williams.
No way. Man. No way. No way.
Yes, sir.
No, he is more beloved than Cade Cunningham? You're bugging. I'll put him in my top 5 in some spot, but
Listen
way is he number 1.
I'm telling you right now, people will be more hurt by him signing with another team than Cade being traded.
You are
crazy.
I'm gonna test you after this. There's no way you truly believe that. Listen,
100% I believe it.
No, he literally just got here, and again, he might not even be here next season.
He's been here for as long as Cade has been here.
But he hasn't had it close to the success that Cade has had. He's had more, he's had some dull moments, some black mark moments. The fumble against Dallas. There have been some games where he's disappeared. Where
was that not the knock on Cade when he got here too?
No, listen.
Come on,
for
man.
People who watch, no. For people who watch Detroit Piston basketball, Cade had 2 bad games. One where he scored 2 points against the Magic, 6 points against the Bucks. His 3rd game, he had a double-double of 18 and 10. People overblow that argument so much. No, I'm not. No.
Again, we are arguing goodness here, right? Like, I'm with you.
You put the wrong guy on that Jamal Williams. No way.
Has to be. The amount of love that guy has from Detroit Lions fans.
It's a lot.
Who makes up probably the biggest group of Detroit sports fans in and of itself. Like, you can say what you want to say about all the other sports. They're great. They all have their own merits. The Detroit Lions are what make this sports town go. And he's the most popular Detroit Lion. Bar none.
That's even debatable. I don't even know about that. That's debatable. He's more popular than Hutch?
I think. You know why? Because he doesn't have the Michigan State hate. I'm telling you.
I don't know about that.
I'm telling you. We're gonna put a survey up on you. We're gonna put a survey up on YouTube. Who's more beloved in Detroit sports, Cade Cunningham or Jamal Williams?
Cade has a mural. Cade has a mural off Jefferson, like the whole painting. Great. What are we talking about? No way. There's no way. There's a man who embodies.
We'll see in the poll results.
Please.
I want to see this when the poll results get up. Who is a more popular, more beloved Detroit sports athlete? Is it Jamal Williams or is it Cade Cunningham? We've got to, and we will give you the result.
Please.
When we see you again on Friday. But for now, we're going to continue to probably debate this off air. We will see. But it's time to come to an end of your favorite Detroit sports show, Beyond the Box. He's Eric. I'm AJ. We will see you again on Friday to talk a little bit more NFL Combine. Let's talk a little spring training. We'll see what we get to. Whichever way the wind's blowing, we'll see you there. Have a good one.